We are live. Hello, my name is Nat Rich, and I'm here with Ian Hurst, and we are on the first big Talkwood show of 2021. Before I go into everything that we're doing, I want to introduce Ian first. He's a fabulous man in the world of mental health and doing incredible things with We Are Hummingbird Health. And he's going to be talking to us today. So welcome, Ian. Thank you so
Hello.
much.
Pleasure.
Hello.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
No problem. I wanted to do today's show to basically put it together very simply and give people a really good idea of what we're going to be covering, what we're going to be doing with the Talkwords, and why it's important to have these conversations. You are just as good as I am, and you're an expert at Talkwords. This is your bag in terms of helping people to handle their emotions.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, the main reason behind the Talkwords is I have in a very kind of particular way, I've been very kind of out of the coronavirus situation that we've got at the moment. I haven't had it personally. None of my family have had it. I've been in a very good position. I feel extremely, lucky to be in this situation. And I know I've got, the right vibe, the right network and everything to bring some positivity from a space that, hopefully will help people feel like they can ground, they can be home with themselves, they can come back to their true space, and just to give back, because I think it's really important, and that's where you come in as well, joining me as well for this. But it's a really tough time out there, and it's feeling like it's going to get tougher, and these conversations are going to be as awkward as you could possibly imagine. Today's won't be that awkward, we'll be kind of surfacing, but in the future we've got shows about awkwardness, we've got rejection, we've got loneliness, we've got depression, porn addictions, we've got lying, manipulation, we've got pregnancy, we've got everything you could possibly make you feel uncomfortable. We will be covering it over the next 35 days and even longer if Boris has his way, because you just mentioned that Boris is doing 8 o'clock.
Yeah, 8 o'clock tonight. Another announcement.
Yeah.
See what has in store for us.
Exactly. We've got no idea what that guy's going to say every time he comes out. So we'll see what he says. But if there is a tier 5, that might make it a little bit more pressured. I don't know what tier 5 will be. Have you any idea?
Well, I was reading about this, about tiered 5. So it'll be similar to the summer lockdown.
Right. Okay.
The biggest problem you've got now is, we can't underestimate how important that sunshine was in helping people. People found it really difficult, and unfortunately when you've got these dark mornings, this cold weather and these dark evenings, it's really going to be a whole new ball game. It really is. So it's really important to talk about that.
It is indeed. So I wanted to, you're an expert in this area, and you are, very down to earth, very chilled to talk to, and for me that makes it very comfortable to talk to you. It's very easy, but not everyone has the flow of conversations like we do. A lot of people struggle. A lot of people don't know, they don't have the right words for how they feel, they're not quite sure what to say. So I wanted just to there's a lot of people out there as well who also think mental health, and they just think, oh, depression and anxiety, but it's also so much more than that. And I wanted to get your expert idea of the current state of mental health, what it actually means, and what we can be kind of looking out for first and foremost.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a few things that bounced into my head. There's something I want to say first, and that's, you use the word expert there. I still cringe when I hear that word. I don't know that I am, but I certainly know a bit, and I still experience poor mental health. I still experience loneliness and isolation. And I think this is one of the most important things for people to realize is you can have all the answers, if that's the way to say it. You can do everything you can, but it doesn't mean that you won't still experience these thoughts and feelings. And this is often where people go wrong when we talk about mental health. We think it's fixable. Organizations do this all the time, and people, if I take these tablets, I'll be fixed. If I go to this therapy, I'll be fixed. If my work gives me 2 weeks off, I'll be fixed. If I stay home for the weekend, I'll be fixed. And unfortunately, because we have this mentality about getting to an end point, it's often our biggest downfall. Because you're born with mental health, and we'll come on to this more in a moment. We've had it since the day we were born, and I'll come back to this. So to try and get to a point where we fix it, i.e. we no longer have it, is impossible. So over Christmas, I found it really difficult. I had a self-imposed 2-week holiday. I haven't had a 2-week holiday 4 years. I don't know. I mean, I run my own organization, my own company. I have my 2 partners, and I don't switch off. But this Christmas, I'm going to switch off. Add to that the fact that I couldn't go anywhere. I still haven't seen my mum to exchange Christmas presents. And the guy that has all the answers, I could tell anyone what they want to know about managing their stress, their anxiety, and everything else, but it still hit me like a ton of bricks. And this is one of the biggest things that people have to realize, is that isolation, stress, anxiety, there is nothing that can stop you from experiencing these. What it's about doing is understanding your triggers, what's happening in you. Like when you start to develop a cold, you get sniffles, you get a sore throat. I've got a cold coming, I'll start to prepare myself for this. The sooner that people can understand their mental health triggers, things that their body do when they're starting to experience poor mental health, the better they are to be able to be aware of it and to manage it. So that's my first thing. I kind of deviated because I was listening. I think, it doesn't matter who you are, what you've gone through, what you've established, you're always going to have ups and downs.
I'm glad you started there. That's a very good point to start on, that we can't fix everything.
I could not wait for today, the 4th of January, because my holiday ended. Now it was different because I was kicking my feet around. I couldn't go out, I couldn't do anything. I was desperate to start talking to people. When I talk to people, that's how I get my top up. That's how I get my therapy. That's how I start to feel like me. So I couldn't wait for today. I woke up, I was all right, where have I got phone calls? Who am I talking to? Who am I engaging with? Because that for me was when I could start to revitalize again. You spoke about mental health and the mental illness, and this is one of the first things that I teach people, or I remind people of when we do sessions. And I train some amazing people, and one of the things that I'll get a lot is, no, never have mental health. Clean as a whistle, me, no problems. Nah, I'm going to sit here and listen to you jabber on about something. I've never experienced it. And I go, that's great, that's amazing. So you've never smiled? Yeah. You ever had sex? Yeah. What are you on about? You ever cried? Yeah. You ever celebrated your team scoring a goal? Yeah. What are you on about? Well, all of these are mental health. All of these things, all of these feelings, all of these emotions, that's mental health. To say you've never had mental health is impossible. You have it since the day you're born. But what we do in this country, this world, I mean, I can only really talk for us, is we use the term mental health as a catch-all, as this big umbrella term that we just say, if we say that, then people will know what we're talking about. Now, as humans, we're naturally negative. We are. So when we hear mental health, we go to the negative state, we go to depressed, we go to stress. So whenever we hear that word, we actually automatically think of an illness. And that's the key thing here. We should start understanding that mental health is part of our everyday life. It's who we are. It's what makes us who we are as humans. The good, the bad, and everything in between, and the flow and ebb that goes with it. People might not have had a mental illness. Very different thing. Very, very different thing. So it's really important to remind ourselves that mental health is everything that we are, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between.
Yeah,
really.
it's just whether you're healthy in your mind. If you've got mental health, so is everyone else. It's okay. But it's the stigma that is attached to that. And it's the feeling that you have that, I've got mental health problems, I must be, crazy. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It means you're alive. It means that you're living, you've got emotions, you've got challenges, you've got things you need to feel. And this is one of the biggest things I think that we're going to come on to a lot over the next month, is people's ability to feel.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to feel, and you're willing to put on Netflix instead, or you want to have a drink instead, or you want to have a different conversation instead, or you want to sniff, or you want to chat, or whatever it is you want to do, everything that will avoid you from feeling, you will end up having some kind of mental health illness.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of work in this, is helping people recognize that all of the triggers. So go into a little bit of that for me, if you can. Oh, yeah.
It's like I said about we've kind of nailed when we start to feel physically unwell. As evolution's got us at a point, we learn when we've gotten a cold. I'm getting a cold coming on. promise you it's a cold, nothing else. I'm
Oh,
getting a
it's
cold coming
COVID.
on. So I start to know that this is happening. I start to think, right, there's things that I'm going to do now to try and minimize this cold. I might go and get some cold and flu tablets just to try and nip it in the butt early. That's what I always do. I don't actually know if that works, but I'll go and get tablets. I'll start wrapping up a bit warmer, making sure I'm warm. I'll start being more conscious about if I'm going outside, am I wrapped up? Because I know that as a physical illness, there's certain triggers that my body says something's happening here and start paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
But what we don't do as individuals is learn at an early age our brain triggers. Now, one of the biggest problems that we have, especially with men, is men misplace mental health with feelings. And that's why one of the big reasons why men don't talk is because they think that mental health is feelings and it's touchy-feely and it's emotions. It's not. It's about understanding what's happening. So, for example, every single one of us has a stress signature, something that we do when we're stressed. It's unique. It's like our thumbprint, something that we'll do. So you said then I'm laid back, and I am. I'm a very laid back, relaxed person. But my stress signature is that I shout. I get snappy. Like that. So my kids know if I'm stressed, or I know now if I'm stressed, I'll shout. That's personal to me. You will have a stress signature. Everyone watching this and everyone listening will have a stress signature. Being able to understand what you do when you're stressed is hugely powerful. I'm doing something, and I usually don't do this when I'm stressed. I mean, we could talk about stress in a whole different level. Other people will have, if they've ever lived with depression, will have depressive triggers, things that they do when they're approaching or in a depressive state. So I have ones. I know that if I'm starting to slip into a depressive state, I'll start to feel guilty, feel like I've done things wrong when I haven't. And it could be silly things like, oh, I think I hung up the phone a bit too quick on my nan. I should phone her back. Yeah, silly things. But that's what I do. That's mine. So when I'm in that state, everything will start to become, or I start to think, is it my fault? Now, I've learned this over a period of time that's my trigger for depression. Anxiety. We all get anxiety. It's a human body response. It occurs daily, multiple times a day. And there's lots of different things. There's physical effects, behavioral effects, and emotional effects. So behavioral could be, sometimes see people and their face go bright red. Okay, that is a physical effect. Going to the toilet, physical effect. Racing heartbeat, palpitation, sweaty palms, physical effects. Going to the toilet. Emotional effects, thinking that you've done something wrong. Everyone will have these. What's so good is when you can start to recognize these triggers. When you're doing something a certain way, I do that when I'm anxious. Right, what am I anxious about? It's the same as, I feel this when I get a cold. I'm getting a cold coming. We need to start learning these triggers. Artists, when I work with musicians, let's use them as an example, as many other people, there's huge amounts of pressure around performance, around not wanting to fail. And this can sometimes lead to turning on a substance to alleviate that thing. You know, I'm at the decks, I'm starting to feel this pressure, this tension, this build up, my rapid heartbeat. I'm here, right. That's when I have a bottle of beer and a sniff. That becomes my default. That becomes my safety blanket. And of course, then you're finding that you're needing to do it halfway through your set and at the end of your set, and then 4 times during your set. So it's working with individuals to say, okay, when you're getting to this point, when you're starting to have all of these triggers occurring, all of these feelings, what can you do that doesn't just resort in doing this? Not how do you stop doing it, how do you eradicate it? Because you can't change someone's reality if that's how they live. But how do you be aware of it? How do you minimize it? How do you look for other resources and things that you can do? And that all comes from knowledge, learning what your power triggers are, learning when they're coming, recognizing them, and having a plan for when they start to come along, rather than just a knee-jerk reaction of, quick, who's got something that I can have? And that's really important, and we need to learn that more.
I think it's a fascinating way of, especially with you just describing around it, especially with DJs, it's one of the biggest things for the music. We're both in the music industry, and
Yeah,
we've seen that. I've DJed myself. I wasn't on gear because I was in Dubai most of the time,
yeah,
but I was definitely drinking. And there's a definite point where I think a lot of mental health issues and mental health and conversations and everything, it all comes to the point of whether you, and it's a spiritual term that some people might say, is whether you know thyself.
yeah,
So some people think that they know themselves very well because they've grown up with themselves, and I'm not taking that away from you. But there are depths to each of
yeah,
us that we're only becoming aware of when certain things are happening and triggers are happening in our
yeah,
life. And these points where we're like, oh God, I need a drink. I've just walked into a bar. I need a drink and I feel really uncomfortable. That's you getting to know yourself, that you're
yeah,
actually probably got social anxiety. And that's another part of yourself. And there's so many hidden little parts. And
totally.
it's not that it's just one thing. And I think what we have now is a big fat trigger across the whole world right now in the form of COVID, and also,
Yeah,
locking people down.
yeah,
I think it's lock up, not lock down, but lock up.
yeah,
And
yeah.
um,
One or the other.
one or the other. And what we're being forced to do is we're being forced to feel. And we're
Yeah,
being forced to face that stuff we can't get out of. So before, we may have walked out of the house, we may have, distracted ourselves, we may have done anything to get away from that feeling. And what this time is doing, although it's crap and we don't like it and it's uncomfortable, it's like we've all been sent to our bedroom.
yeah,
It's literally a time from out of the silence and out of the stillness of what we have now is where the most beautiful things can come.
yeah,
And we have this opportunity to go into these places in our homes and within ourselves and feel who we truly are and redesign ourselves for the future.
hmm,
And it's not about like completely forgetting this part of yourself and developing a new one, because you're becoming a better version of you every day. But I don't like the word better either, but you're
yeah,
becoming a more succinct version of you every day if you're willing to look at who you are. It's not about
yeah,
taking off your clothes and leaving them in one room and you're going to be a new person tomorrow, because that stuff defines you. That
yeah,
some of the best like musicians out there are now clean and sober,
yeah,
and they talk about how their music and their life was incredible and it's a source of their pain, and they make amazing music because they've had that scenario,
yeah,
but they knew it wasn't a lifestyle they could lead anymore.
absolutely.
And I think now we have this opportunity, especially in the music industry, where and this is what I want to announce for the talk quiz, is we are in the silence.
Yeah,
What happens in the silence is the most magnificent stuff you could possibly imagine. And we're going to learn about this over the next 35 days. We're going to go into what that silence is, into that space. And we're going to see so many different things that come up. But what does come up is these awkward feelings
yeah.
and these difficult conversations that we all need to have.
You should have awkward conversations with yourself all the time, and listening to you then again there's a few things. It comes back to this whole fix thing. How people are rushing around like headless chickens, like, how do I fix the way I'm feeling? How do I change the way I'm feeling? How do I do something now and it will make me feel different instantly? And I always tend to have to be the bearer of bad news, where I say, well, it's not. It's actually small things every day. And when you start to do these small things every day, bit by bit, things start to occur. And I'm not, sometimes I feel like a preacher, and I hate it because I'm not, I'm not in any way. But
I'm going to
sometimes
book you on for Sunday mornings, my preacher.
but sometimes I feel like I am, because I've been on an amazing journey, and we won't talk about it now, but my life 5 years ago was a million times different than where it is now, and I've gone on a journey and I've had to learn loads about myself bit by bit, and they are just, something will happen, you go, God, that's really me. And I say now that I'm cheating life. I literally, I'm 38 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm alive. And a lot of addicts will say this, or recovering addicts, or people that no longer drink. But I lived a life that I believed was what you meant to do. That's what life was. And it wasn't until I had a mental illness and I started to educate myself and I started to learn and I started to have my eyes open to all these small things that they started to make up the bigger picture. And it's having the patience and the time and the trust that you're doing the right thing, and that those awkward conversations are good. I still have them now where I sit there and go, yeah, that's really not a good trait of mine, but it is mine, and I've either got to own it or I've got to
Yeah.
do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really tough to do. And you know, but it's doing these small things daily that will really make a big difference in people's lives. And I don't, so I drink not a lot anymore. I do a lot of work with people who are addicts or recovering addicts just for what I do, and I've never actually stood there and said I'm not going to drink anymore. But through what I do now, I don't very rarely. And what I found is I used to think that to have fun I had to go and drink.
Didn't we all? I think most people do. Yeah.
But I've learned now that like I'm more fun. I have more fun. I engage more. I dance more when I'm sober. And it's like, I don't understand, you know, it's one of them things like that doesn't make any sense, but somehow something's just occurred that's made me be like, actually, I never needed that. Like, there's something else that I wanted to touch on very quickly, if I can. It's about beliefs, because you were saying about these awkward conversations, and beliefs are really important. So I said I believe that I had to drink to have a good time. And there was a young girl who told me this story amazingly, and I've stolen it, and I make no bones about that. She knows I've stolen it. But she described to me a beautiful way of talking about all the beliefs that we have as individuals. So we form beliefs the moment we're born, and we hold on to them, and we hold them to be true. And what these beliefs do is they can stop us living our lives. And they can be good or bad. But the way she described it, and the way I love, is your computer at home or your laptop, every couple of months you'll get a little pop-up in the bottom corner, and it will say update your software. And most of us will just click on it and go, nah, not today, thanks, gone. Yeah. But if you did click on it and you said, yes, update my software, what would happen is that bit of equipment would go into your computer, into every single file. It would look at every single file in your computer, one by one, and it would say, yep, you're up to date, or no, you're not. And so what you need to do is think of your head, your brain, as your computer, and you've got thousands, millions of files inside your head. Some of those files are years out of date. But you're still living your life as if they're accurate. You're still living your life like that file that went out of date in 1998 is still up to date. Yeah. And what we don't do as humans is go through these files, challenge our beliefs, and go, is that still correct? You know, I could have a belief that if I wore a bright pink t-shirt that I'd look a certain way, but you know what, I popped a bright pink t-shirt on today, and actually I don't look the way I thought I would. I'll update that belief.
And you match my logo, so
I match your logo. But this is the thing, we must get into the habit of challenging our beliefs, thinking, is this still correct? Because there's so many beliefs that are holding us back or stopping us from doing things because we haven't checked if they're still up to date. And I think that's really important for people to start doing, and that comes into those awkward conversations, because often to challenge your belief, you're going to be having an awkward conversation.
You are. And that's, you know, it's sometimes they aren't even our beliefs. Sometimes they are someone else's belief that we've taken on board, and we're like, oh, I thought I believed this. And I was listening to the work of Byron Katie the other day. I don't know if you've come across her. One of the things that I thought was fabulous is she talks about an event, and if any parents are going to listen to this in the future, or you're catching up on this later down the line, you can thank me for this one. It's honestly a game changer. And she said she was talking over her years, she kept having a problem with her son not picking up his socks, and it was really pissing her off. And she's like, oh God, this is doing my head in. And she said she would always have a go at him for it. And then one day she realized that the thought that she had about her son picking up the socks was the problem. It wasn't the son with the socks. And she said, if I didn't care about the socks and I just picked them up myself, I'd have no stress. Yeah. Because my son's not going to change. She said, and it was a big fundamental difference. Was most people would say, well, no, the son's disrespecting you and he must pick up his socks. Who says? And she says this very clearly. Who made up all these rules that we should and should not do this? And because society says so. And I thought about it the same with my dad. And I wash the dishes, and I'll do my best to wash the dishes. They've been acceptable in my world for the last, you know, however many years I've been alive, never saying my age. But 26 for life. But basically, I always do the dishes in the same way, and I put them to the side, and my dad will come and pretty much do them again because they're not done the way that he wants. But we've come to this point where I've said, you do that, or
Yeah.
I just won't do them at all. And that's okay, because I'm not going to get stressed. You're not going to get stressed if you just do them in the first place. And I'm not leaving them there. I'm happy to do them. But if I'm not doing it to your standard, then that's your job, not mine. And we have a giggle about it. But it saves a lot of mental frustration when we get out of our own way. And I think a lot of what we're going to see now is what we're coming up in the world that we have today is not the world that we had at this time last year at all, in any way, shape or form. And we are going to be experiencing a difference in the way we think the world should be.
Yeah.
And we're going to think that we should be able to do lots of things, which we, in our mind, in our minds, should be able to do, but we're going to be stopped in a number of ways from doing things. And also financially, we're going to talk quite a lot over the Talkwards about finances, because it comes into a lot of areas of life. And it's one of the biggest things where people think they should have more. And people always say, oh, I need more money. And I used to be so guilty of this myself until fairly recently, this year, actually, as things changed. But I used to say, oh, I need more money. I didn't need more money. I needed a different set of, or a different level of consciousness to be able to help me create more money. I needed a different lifestyle to get more money. It wasn't that I needed more money. It's just that I wasn't doing enough to get what I actually wanted. And that's because I was making lazy choices, or I was avoiding my finances, or I was looking at other things and not looking at what I should have been looking at that would have helped me to get to where I wanted to go. So we're going to have a lot of blame over this year coming, like we have from last year, where we're going to blame the government. We're going to blame everyone out there for the situation that we aren't in. But as you know, and and as any of my clients in the past have known, when I do personal responsibility coaching, it's about taking 100% responsibility for everything that shows up in your life, because that way the frustration is separate. You can deal with something if you separate it, but if you're blaming it on someone else and you want them to hold the blame, nothing can ever be solved from that situation.
It's there's a CBT, so for cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a tool used called the ABC model. So you've got the activating event, the belief, and then the consequence. And it's an interesting one because the event's always going to happen. And often or not always, but the event happens, we then impart our belief or our thought process on it, which will drive the consequence. And it's really key that, and that saying, if they had no luck, if they didn't have bad luck, they'd have no luck at all. And you kind of laugh, but you think, well, it's true. It's the event's going to happen. It's how it's dealt with. And an interesting one when you mentioned about the government is, I think personally, they're damned if they're doing, they're damned if they don't. We're not going to make this political thing, but if I tell you you've got to stay in for the next 6 months, you're going to be angry. If I tell you to go on and crack out outside, you're going to be angry because I'm not telling you to stay in. It's hard, and often people will then make their own. They'll apply their own framework to the event, and that will dictate their consequence. And it's really important but again, this all comes from happy-go-lucky attitudes, and that's quite a fluffy word, but the better your mental health, the more positive your mental health, and I won't talk about it now, but I use this great analogy called cashing in and cashing out. But the more cash you have in your mental health, it helps you ride these waves. Shit's always going to happen. That's the one thing I can guarantee you. If you want me to guarantee you anything, I guarantee that shit's going to happen, probably on a daily, weekly basis. But good stuff happens a lot too. But again, remember me saying, as humans, we're naturally negative. We don't check that. We don't carry it on. We just get rid of it. And it's so important to start paying more attention to this good stuff to drive your positive mental health. Remember, we all have positive mental health from the day we were born. You have more of the good stuff that helps you ride through the shit stuff.
Yeah.
And you will still have horrible things that happen that will knock you for six. But then it's having that resilience to build back up. And resilience isn't manning up, pull your socks up, get on with it. Two very different things. Resilience about your sense of mental well-being, and it's really, really important we apply that to it.
It's one of the things I noticed. I think I remember telling you, I might have done before. When I basically had a back problem with my back, and I used to think, you could have bad days.
Yeah.
I don't believe in bad days anymore. I believe in bad hours, bad minutes, bad moments that really you don't want them to be there. But I believe in this short period of time, because what I realized was when I broke my back and I couldn't get up, I could hardly walk. I couldn't walk for a long period of time. And I realized that just waking up and lifting my neck up off the pillow and reaching over to stop my alarm hurt me.
Yeah.
When I wanted to try and get up, I'd have to crawl to the toilet at my friend's place where I was staying just to go for a wee. I'd have to crawl back to the bed just to lay back down. And when I lay back down, if I'd forgotten my phone or my drink or something, I'd have to get back up and I'd have to crawl. And that is a bad morning, right? And I used to, but for the rest of the day, I'd be reading, I'd be chilling out, I'd be watching Netflix, I was creating I Am Sound in my head, I was having conversations. The whole day wasn't bad. The moments that I started my day in were bad.
Yeah.
And I remember years ago when I used to have slight overshare, but it's a talk. I used to have cystitis all the time. If any woman's ever had cystitis, going for a wee is like the most painful thing in the world. I'd be thinking I was having a terrible day and then get cystitis and be like, oh shit, it's even worse now. And what I realized, it's the moment or the situation or the response that is the thing that we find uncomfortable. But if we don't have the right mental health to be able to section that little part of our day off, we'll make it a bad day and my day was terrible. It's not been a good one today and this and that. We exaggerate our negativity beyond belief.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
What there.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't often empathize. I don't try and pretend to know what someone's gone through, but I too, I don't know if I told you, I had very bad back. I've had back operation, so I feel your pain there, and I know that. But you're quite right. People. So what you're talking about there is what's known as the mental health continuum, and it's fluid. It's like water, and it is exactly that. It's this. We'll move up and down multiple times a day, multiple times. You want to be up in this top quadrant here where it's all lovely, a utopia, you feel good, you're in a great mood. You might wake up and your wife's brought you or your partner's brought you a cup of coffee, the sun's shining through the window, you can hear your kids playing in their bedrooms, and you're filled with this emotional goodness. Yeah, and you're up there in that top quadrant. And then you get out of bed and maybe you stand on a plug. Now, although that's physical, that's going to have an impact on you. You get in the shower, it's cold. You're driving out of your house, someone cuts you up. These niggles start to occur. You get to work, someone goes, how's your morning been? Shit. Because that's all you'll remember. That's all you'll remember. So what you've done is you've moved from up here where it was lovely utopia to back down here. What then happens is how you get back up. Because you should be doing this multiple times a day. Multiple times a day, you should be going up and down, or ideally spending time here. Now, things that drive poor mental health, remember we have mental health all the time. Things that drive poor mental health: late nights, drinking, drugs, stress, working too hard, family life. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, all these things that drive poor mental health, we now class as life.
Right.
Which means that 75% of the time, we spend our lives in that bottom quadrant of poor mental health. Yet most people will still never tell you, they will still say, I've never had mental health, because we don't understand it. But most of the time, this is where people are. They're experiencing poor mental health. It's really important to understand this fluidity, this moving up and down, and to recognize it. And just whilst I'm on my rant, some of this
go for it.
Depression, and I know I can't remember if it's a topic or this, but people believe, maybe because we're led to, that depression is a chemical imbalance. There is very, very little evidence to suggest that is caused by that. What drives depression is an extended period of time in that bottom quadrant. Not a chemical imbalance. Yes, chemicals are used to help alleviate it, to treat it, to get it back to a good place, but it's spending too much time in this negative state. And that's really, blows people's minds. They're like, well, I didn't know that.
To be honest, I didn't know that. I don't really buy into the chemical imbalance thing. I know it can be, don't want to piss anyone off. I know there can be chemical imbalances for things, but I think from a kind of a different school of thought. But I didn't know that, and I've heard a lot of people say that to me, where I switch off from the conversation. But there's a whole bunch of people that I know out there that have told me that before, so that's quite surprised me as well.
Your illnesses, bipolar, schizophrenia, psychosis, chemical imbalance. Depression, you would be hard pushed to find the evidence to back up a case that is driven by a chemical imbalance. Is an extended period of time poor mental health. Really, really key thing to drive on here. And I'll tell you an interesting, I'm off, but I find it simple with depression. You know, we get confused that depression is, you know, the blues or feeling down or not quite right. And again, this all links in. To be diagnosed clinically depressed, you have to have experienced a low sense of self, a poor mood, a loss of enjoyment in things you once enjoyed, for 14 days consistent. Now, we're not talking about Monday to Friday, down in the dumps, Saturday, Sunday, weekend millionaire, then back down again. No, that isn't depression. That's again life. That's, you know, doing the job you don't enjoy.
That's living in London in the city.
Yeah, exactly. To be clinically diagnosed depressed, you have to have 14 days. Now, this is what the biggest problem is. A doctor would look at it and go, well, I need to see 14 days. Now, one of the biggest tips that I'd give is for people to write journals. And it could be 1 word, 2 words, 5 words, 10 words, War and Peace, whatever you want to do. But if you write in a book every day for 14 days, you'll be able to start tracking whether it is persistent or not. Because again, like I've said, we're naturally negative. So if you say, how have you been for the last 2 weeks, Ian? I'll only remember the negative. Oh, I've been shit. I won't remember last Tuesday, I had a great day with my kids and my wife, because that doesn't factor. But when you have a journal, you start to be able to track it. So you're looking at this depressive, you know, what drives depression and 14 days consistent. It's really important that we start to understand this and start to track that that's what's coming from it. And to if you're in that, experiencing that, to start going to see a doctor. But one of the ways I try and describe depression to people, and this is kind of what I do, what we at Hummingbird do, I try and take all of the clinical stuff, all of the technical stuff, and I try and make it understandable. Most people, everyone, has been dumped at some point in their life, right? I have once or twice.
I have been dumped plenty of times.
Once or twice I've been dumped. I mean, that feeling, and this is how I try and relate to people what it's like, that feeling of, oh, Shirley was the one. I'm never going to meet another Shirley. There's no point even bothering. What's the point? I'm going to sit in my house all day long because Shirley was the love of my life, and no one will compare to Shirley. So now that feeling of hopelessness about finding another partner, about being in love again, about having butterflies again, there's no point, there's no hope. That is a tiny segment. I want you to think about the feeling of hopelessness rather than, obviously depression is bigger, but that feeling of hopelessness, and we've all experienced it at some point, that's what depression is. A loss of hope. Hope for now, hope for the future. But I'm not just talking about meeting another Shirley. I'm talking about life. Yeah. There's no point leaving my house. There's no point going to the doctor. There's no point seeing a psychiatrist or a counsellor. There's no point telling my work. They won't understand. There's no point. That loss of hope. And that's what we're trying to say is, you know, what a depressive state is, a real loss of hope. And, you know, it's important that we start trying to educate people on these simple fundamentals. That's a mental illness. Mm-hmm. Everything else we've talked about, mental health, day in, day out, ups and downs, highs and lows. It's, you know, it's all about education. You've got to give people the tools to understand.
It is. And it's, I remember when I gave up drugs and alcohol. Obviously, I've told you the story before. I won't go into it. Gave up drugs, gave up alcohol, gave up sex for 3 years. And when people have heard that story, and I've also given up social media now, when people have heard that, so they go, what do you do? Because that was, for me, that was that quadrant, that shit quadrant that I didn't want to live in, that was there. Yeah. And people are like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I live. Yeah. And they're like, oh, and you can see the mental effort that it takes to think, what does she mean live when there's no alcohol and there's no drugs? And it's like, it was like popping little popcorn in their mind, because they'd never experienced meeting someone that had given up everything. Yeah. And it was either one thing or another, but I'm here saying I've given up everything. I'd even given up coffee for a long time. I have it very sparingly now, but for me, these areas was that quadrant. And I remember coming back from Ibiza, And I'd sat on my bed, and I'd done a season in 2009 in Ibiza, and I got addicted to ketamine, and I was as grey as you could be. And even though I had a tan, it just wasn't the best look I'd ever had. And I remember sitting there thinking, so I've partied on the best island with the best DJs at the best parties with the best people, and I've had an amazing time. Is this it? Have I reached my life's peak? What is more than raving? What more is there than a weekend? What more is there than going out and like taking ecstasy or doing ketamine or whatever it is I'm doing? And I couldn't answer that own question. I was just like, I don't know what else there is to life. And I knew there had to be something, but I didn't know that actually what I was living was about 2.5% of what life is. I thought my weekends and my raving and my life as it was, because that's what we've been led to, especially being English. I mean, everyone's in a pub by the time they're young. And that point of my understanding was, oh, I don't know who I am. And not long after, a friend of mine said to me, after he went out for one morning and he didn't come back till later on in the day, but he intended to come back within like 10 or 15 minutes. And he said to me, look, when I get back, have a think of what you want to do. And we'll go do that for today, because obviously you're not feeling great, but we'll go do whatever it is you want to do. Have a think what you really want to do, and let's go and do that. We're in London, could be anything. He didn't get back till 5:30 or something that day. And I was like, we're a bit worried, like, where did you go? He couldn't answer his phone. Long story short, he got arrested, but that's another story. But he came back and he was all stressed and tired. And he's like, did you even think of what you wanted to do? And I couldn't still think of it. And I did the whole day. And I'm like, I don't know, but I think I want to go to the Science Museum. He's like, what? And he's obviously pissed off because he's been arrested. He's like, what? Why do you want to go to the Science Museum? And I'm like, I think I like science.
Yeah.
But I didn't know who I was. And that was a scary point. And this is what we've got now, is that all of our quadrant, that little corner that we've been living in, has been taken away for good or for bad. And we are now living without our little area of our safety net. And what do we do now? Who are we? What do we like? Where do we go? How do we come from this? Where's our money coming from? Where's our safety net? Where, have we stocked up on supplies? Is the world going to be the same? Are we going to have a world war? Do I need to break up with this person? Can I still be with this? Everything, every single thing has come into question.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
It's, do you know what? It's petrifying. And so when I worked, I worked in London. I don't live in London. I worked in London. I worked in insurance for 17 years. So that's what I did before this. I think I've told you this. And, I was a very broken man. I was working to make money, to live the life that society told me that I lived. My wife, my kids, main breadwinner. This is what you do. You go and make a living. You drink every day. I worked in a culture where if I left at 4:30, I was skiving. But if I went to the pub at lunchtime and didn't come back to the next day, that's perfectly fine. I mean, where's the logic in that? Go at 12, don't come back, but go at 4:30 and you're skiving. I mean, and I lived this lifestyle. And as I said, I had a mental illness, and things got pretty bad pretty quick. And it was, you have these landmark moments. And I remember sitting there thinking, God, what would I even do if I didn't work here? What would I even, do? And it was like this thing. I thought, I've enjoyed learning a bit about my mental health. I'd like to do it more. And this fire lit in me, this fire and this belief and this passion that's what I wanted to do. And it was, like I said, I said this earlier, I'm living more now than I've ever lived. I'd never felt that before. I remember there's a book that I read once, and I'd written in there, I have no passion. It was when I was working I had no passion. And I look at it now and I think, how on earth did I, who doesn't shut up anymore,
I know, I can't imagine you with no passion.
Have no passion. But that's how I spent my life, just trudging around with no passion. And when you start to go on this journey, when you start to give yourself up, and I'm not spiritual, I'm not holistic, I'm not kind of like, like I said, a preacher. I've said that a few too many times now, protesting too much.
I'm going to call you a preacher and you're coming on Sunday.
But when you just kind of allow yourself to learn and allow yourself to explore and to be passionate about something, everything else just clicks. I had to leave a job in London and still pay a mortgage, still pay for free for people to live.
Mm.
And everyone kept saying to me, when are you going to go and get a job? When are you going to go back to insurance? And I was like, this is my job. You know, even my mum, my wife, everyone was like, when are you going to go and get a job? And I was like, this is what I do now, deal with it. And, you know, this is when mental health still, you know, pre-worldwide pandemic, when everyone's now realised how important it is, this is when it wasn't, you know, on top people's agendas. You know, work organisations used to spend years before they'd come back to me, because every quarter mental health would get dropped off and dropped off and dropped off. And now I had a phone call today, like, can you do it next week? No.
Yeah.
It's all changed. But when you believe it in here, when you're passionate and when you learn and you go on a journey, you start meeting amazing people, you start talking to amazing people, and things start to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You've just got to trust in life. And I know that's easier said than done, but I didn't come from money. I didn't come from like a big trust fund. I've done it, and it's scary and it's not easy, but if you believe in it, you got to do it. You really got to do it.
You have to. And
have the awkward conversation with yourself.
If there's plenty of awkward conversations to be had, we're going to have so many of them this month. I'm so excited for what's to come. And I just want to say that I used to have a lot of beliefs around certain things. I now am happy to say I have a lot of faith.
Yeah.
And that is because I have been on this journey for such a long time that things have been proven to me that I cannot deny. Yeah. And every time I surrender something, whether it's the drugs, the alcohol, whatever it is, I surrender and hand over. And I'm not religious in any sense when I say this. Even though I went to Sunday school when I was younger, it was for the orange juice and the free biscuits that you got. But there was no other reason to be there. But now I have this ultimate faith that I know what I'm meant to be doing. And when I trust in that, the world works around me and for me. I'm not working against anything. I'm not trying so hard. I mean, people have said, oh, you must be working really hard for this Talkwards. And I'm like, no, like not at all. And I'll be honest when I say this is, for me, this is what I love doing, having conversations with my friends about deep subject, as you know, like this is what I do. If I give it a couple of hours every evening to host these conversations with everyone I know, that's easy for me. And the days are pretty much free because I do. And it's like everybody wants to talk about the same subject. So I'm not even having to really try to put this together. And I remember, you know, a couple of days ago, I was thinking, oh, I was going into that ego thing of like, oh, have I not done enough? You know, because I'm thinking getting closer and closer to the time. It's and everyone saying, what are you going to do? And I'm thinking, I haven't organized this and I haven't organized that. And I'm like, whenever I make a plan, God's got a better one. Mine just goes out the window and God's like, no. So I thought, you know what? I need to have the dates. I need to know my key people. I need to kind of know a structure of the show as in like it's going to be an hour or two, whichever. And the rest of it, I'm going to let it self-fill up. And I'm going to trust that my network is going to come into what I'm doing. And what I've realized is just with that thought, I mean, I've got one guy, I won't say too much about it now, but guys, you have to watch this on the 13th. I think it's the 13th it's going to be of January. I've got a guy that was kidnapped when he was younger, and he basically was forced to be a child soldier in Sierra Leone. And he was trained to kill people. And he's now out of that situation, and he is a music artist. He's a very good music artist. He is in the UK and he is phenomenal. And he's going to come onto the station and talk to me about that experience. And this is something that I felt to myself, oh my God, can I handle this level of depth? Can I handle this type of conversation? Because this is going way beyond anything, but this is real. If you want to talk awkwards, this is as awkward as it gets.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I couldn't have planned that. But because I'm staying out of my own way, and I know that if I try and micromanage everything, which is an anxiety thing, we think, oh my God, if I just do this, this, and this, nothing's going to go wrong. What's going wrong is in the moment. Whether the event goes well or not, you're going wrong in the moment because you're putting yourself into a state where you can't stabilize that.
No, absolutely. It's going to be fascinating, all of these different ones that you've got. It's going to be, you know, I think people will be shocked, have to ask some serious questions, but again, it's a safe space for people to ask themselves questions, because all you want to really be doing is nudging someone's curiosity. You know, and like I said, I ask myself questions all the time. Sometimes I answer them, sometimes I don't. I've still got that drawer as much as anyone else. But I think it's also understanding that we're not alone. Again, this is another huge male thing, but as a population, 67, let's say 68 million people in the UK, you know, we all like to, well, we are all individual. We should say that straight away. We are all individual, but what we're not is alone. And things happen, or we do things, and we think we're the only ones. Generally bad stuff. Addicted to drugs, drinking, abusive to your partner, promiscuous, gambling, you name it. We think we're the only ones. And I guess what this will do, and everything that I try and do with what I, you know, the organizations that I work with, is to help show people that as individual as you are, you're not alone. Someone's been there, done it, twice as big, if you want to say that, you know.
Someone somewhere up way more than you have.
Yeah, someone somewhere will trump you, you know, and take comfort in that. And it isn't a pissing contest, but what it is to say, you know, how do I get strength from this? How do I learn from this? How do I go, right, I won't be so hard on myself, because actually I'm not the only one doing this. And that's a really big thing, really, really big. And that's what we need to pay more attention to as a nation, really, I think, knowing that we're not alone.
I get like teary-eyed. I mean, I always cry. Everyone knows I always cry. I get teary-eyed thinking about it, because I know how hard it was to wake up in 2009. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about my spirituality or whatever it was I was going through. I didn't know what the hell was happening to me. And it was dark, and I felt so lonely, and it was so tough. But waking up now and realizing that there is another part of you, and it's, oh my God, it's your awareness, and you're like, I didn't even know this part of me existed, is going to be challenging, because we're in a very challenging external environment.
Yeah.
And this is the bit that really does make me think, oh God, I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing it. And I've got, you know, everything around me to support me on this. But I've heard so many times that people keep saying this, that, oh yeah, well, it's all going to go back to normal. We're going to go back to normal. It's going to be fine. Well, you know, when I'm out in summer this year, and I'm like, I hope I am wrong when I say this. I hope that every single thing out there is, you know, is going to be okay again, and we're going to be back to normal. I don't see how that happens. And I live in a very real space, although magical at times. And a lot of people have been putting off their feelings and their understandings and their whatever it is. Last year, they're putting them off, thinking that this year they're going to be back out there. They're going to be back out doing on the decks. They're going to be back out, you know, whether it's music or whether it's in creativity, whatever. They think all of it's going to be okay. And we are going through a very difficult period economically, you know, financially, individually, politically, in every way possible. Is that those feelings that were delayed will come up this year if it's summer that we think we're going to be out, and it gets further and further away. And I want to create this, you know, this space for people to be able to listen to what's really going on inside people, not externally, not in the Sun, not on the BBC, not in the Daily Mail. This is inside of you. What is going on, which is way more important, way more, you know, difficult than what you think reading the presses and listening to somebody else's bullshit. You've got your own to listen to. It's hard, and I want to create this space where people can actually all join together and be individual, but on a journey and in a community, in a space where they feel like they can actually go, do you know, I watched that show last night. Yeah. How do you feel about it? If they can just talk, that is me. That's my job done.
Yeah. Do you know, and I always chuckled to myself like last year when everyone said, "We'll just get to New Year and it'll all be good." And I was thinking, "Well, does this expire on New Year?" I don't think. You know, how have we set such a clear date that we'll finish 2020, and you get closer and closer, and people start to go, "Oh, maybe not." And it's like, well, yeah, it wasn't just going to stop. I want to talk about something that ties in with this, and it's something that I talk to everyone that I train and anyone I ever come into contact with, and it's underpants. Right, you're gonna have to bear with me on this, but it's underpants, and there's so many different pairs of underpants out there, right? Loads. M&S, Calvin Klein, whatever. Some big, some small, some thongs, some G-strings, whatever. The fact is that there's so many. Yeah, as human beings, as these individuals that we are, we tend to find the ones that suit us, the ones that we feel comfortable in,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that allow us to be free and to move and to engage with other people. What I'm trying to say is we can't all wear thongs, or we can't all wear Calvin Kleins. If I put my wife's underwear on and it wasn't a Saturday night, I'd feel awkward, right? I would feel like I'm not who I want to be. I'm not Ian. And the reason I'm saying this is because mental health and mental health awareness is like underpants. We are spoiled for choice. We are. There's a lot of crap stuff out there, but there's a lot of good stuff. You and I, we can't change the stats. The same amount of people will take their life today, whether I say it or you say it. The same amount of people will be affected by domestic abuse. The same amount of people will have X, Y, and Z. We can't change those. But if everyone only thinks that they have Calvin Kleins to wear, it becomes cumbersome. It becomes hard for people to relate. Mm-hmm. Having all this variety, having all the different guests that you're going to have, having different organizations like what we do at We Are Hummingbird, like what you do at I Am Sound, like all the other great organizations, and there are loads. And this is why we should all pull together on this. By having all these different organizations, we're giving people choice. And all it takes is one person to go, I get that. Mm-hmm. I get how he said that. I get how she said that. They might have heard it 1,000 times before, but it's not been put across in the right way.
Yeah.
And it really is this simple. The more we can get variety, the more we can get different people with different personalities talking, the quicker someone can find the right pair of underpants, the ones that allow them to be them, the ones that allow them to be comfortable and think, I get this. And this is why it's so important that as mental health organizations that we all pull together. And I can't stress that enough. I'll work with everyone because as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't want to think that I've allowed someone to slip through the net because I've said, oh, I won't work with them or I won't work with them. That's not the way this should work, you know? Yeah. So yeah, that's my story on underpants. And I think it's massively important that we start realizing that we've got to find our tribe. We've got to find what we relate to and what makes us, because if you're trying to wear something that isn't yours,
that's the one thing I've got with on the website, and I've said it since I started this business. I don't have social media. I'm not interested in having social media. The amount of people who want me to have social media is beyond belief. They're like, oh, but it's just so much better. And I'm like, let me do it how I want to do it. Let me speak to people in the way I want to speak to people, and my tribe will be attracted by my vibe. Yeah. I know that. And I know I'm not for everyone. Some people might go, oh yeah, Nat Rich, I love her. Some people might hate me. There's people I know from when I was growing up that still have problems with me, 15 years on. I'm never going to get to those people. But if I can put a platform out there that's got people on it that people can get to, and it's got nothing to do with me, I'm still achieving my goal. And
how can we be liked by 68 million people? Like every time I do a session, I'm like, there's going to be at least some of you in here that don't like me. And all I ask is that you tell me so I can put you in touch with someone else.
Someone that you do, exactly, with someone that you do.
You can't be liked by everyone. It's virtually impossible. It really is. And to be offended by that is just silly. I mean, it's a numbers game. So if you don't get what I'm saying, if you think I'm talking a load of gibberish when I tell you about being dumped by Sylvia and wearing underpants, then I can put you in contact with someone who will tell you in a different way. And that's what's so important about all this is trying to find the way that you can communicate.
Yeah.
Really
and I had my first bit of hate mail. And when I say hate mail, I mean, I had a YouTube channel years ago when I had nothing to say. I was talking crap, had nothing to say, but I had like a, let's call it a troll event a long time ago. And it was horrific. And it made me shut my YouTube channel down. I was like, oh my God, I can't deal with this. Anyway, I got my first bit of hate mail last week and they went in. And I'm talking like, I was just like, oh, wow. And I was sat up in bed, stupid. I went back to bed and I took my phone with me back to bed, and I'm there in my comfy space, which is where I don't really usually like to have my phone. And I'm there and I'm reading this email and I'm like, oh shit, this is it. I thought, I'm putting my head out there now, having more shows and being more vocal and being, who I am as a talker. That's what I'm meant to do. I know that. And it's like, okay, I'm putting my head out there. Someone's going to want to shoot me. This guy went in and he didn't just email me once. He emailed me twice. And I was just like, just for the second time. And I laid there and I thought, I'm about to launch the Talkwards. And we're going to have a TV channel soon as well by the end of the month. I haven't told you, but this is also going to be available on TV. We're doing stuff with Roku. So this is going to go far and wide.
Yeah.
And I'm about to do this. And I'm like, I'm doing a show about the Talkwards, which is the most awkward moment of someone's life. I am putting myself right into the part where people are going to want to shoot the messenger. And it dawned on me, and I was just like, this is going to be uncomfortable. But I'm doing it because I know, do you know what? If there's one thing I can do, it's articulate stuff. I can speak. And even if you don't want to listen to me, I can speak well enough to get somebody else to come on that might speak in the way that you want. And that alone, I will be able to be successful because I'm willing to also shut up when it's not my turn to speak. And I thought about this guy, and I thought, I wonder if there's anything I could say or do to this person. And there's this part of my ego that wanted to reach out and try and, say, oh no, please. And then there's other part of no. And it's just an acceptance that this is going to be a very awkward year. And I'm hosting a show called The Talkwards. And I was like,
you're always going to get it. We slightly side note. We have one. We always laugh. Someone called us. We are Hummingbird. So we got it put on a T-shirt. We thought genius, absolute genius. So we had it put on a T-shirt, and we thanked the guy. We said, "That's brilliant. Thank you very much."
Oh my God.
And you just got to look at it and think. Some people are just naturally gifted at being creative. We'd have never come up with that. So
I've had Nat bitch a few times.
It's all.
We went wrong on that occasion.
You can't let these things bother you because it's again, we just live in a world where it's easier to deflect. It's easier to vent. It's easier to push outwards rather than looking. And I think you get the last laugh when you learn around. All this great stuff of mental health, because what it allows you to do is really look at that person and see their true self and be like, wow, you crack on with your job, I'll crack on with mine, and I'm here if you need a helping hand at any point. They hate that.
They do hate that, but I think that's the perfect way to end today's.
Let's go and listen to Boris now, shall we?
I don't know what he's got to say. Listen, I just want to say before we go, Ian, thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
Loving the fact that you're on with me today for the first one. I know there's going to be plenty more for us to do. They're going to get way more awkward. I'm going to cry because I'm thinking about it. I'm feeling emotional. But I know that if there's anyone out there and you are struggling or you're feeling like you can't have conversations or you don't know what to do, at some point over the next 35 days, there will be a conversation that you can either absorb yourself or share with someone that you might be having difficult communication with. There's going to be ways for you to reflect on what you're doing. I have a whole load of homework. I'm going to be your teacher for a little while. I have homework for people to do as well for some of the shows. So there's going to be a whole members area that we've set up that's going to give you reflective questions that you can answer. You don't have to give us the answers. They're just private questions for you to ask yourself on your journey. There's competitions, there's giveaways. We've got celebrities. We've got massive companies coming on board. This is being shared with Pioneer by a Pioneer DJ. We've got Beatport, we've got Point Blank Music College, we've got loads of other big companies, and this is going to grow in front of your eyes because the more and more people out there that need this are going to be sharing it. So even if you don't want to have a talk with others, somebody else out there might be. So we're going to be pushing for people to have talkwards, and we don't mean to bother you in any way if somebody comes to you with a talkward about behavior that you've done in the past, but we just want to get people into a real space, and we really just want to do this in a fun way, but and make it in a way that you just can't avoid anymore. We can't avoid anything anymore. We have to face it all.
Amazing
Very excited.
It'd be brilliant.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be awkward, but it's going to be fun. That's what I can guarantee. And there's going to be tears. So I need to find a sponsor of Kleenex or something. Anybody knows But is there anything else you want to add before we go and listen to Boris?
No, I think listen, I'm always happy to come on here. I can talk for days on any given subject. I enjoy it very much. So and if anyone's got anything that they want to ask me or come to me with, then they can. I think there's links at the bottom of the page on here. Get in touch. I'm an open book, so let's chat and we can see if there's any support that's needed.
Yeah, that's good. If anybody's watching this and you want to join us, or you want to get any of your products out there, you're going to be good for people's mental health as well. If you've got anything that people might need, get in touch, let me know. We did have 1 or 2 comments. I just want to very quickly read them out. Petra said, if only people worried about their mental health as much as they did their cellulite and their muffin tops. That is a good one. That is a good one, because that was me. Not that I have my muffin top anymore, but if I'd have worried about that back then. And then Queen Boudica Radiant, I love that name, says they are conditioning us, the populace, to accept that we're not going back to normal out there. They have no intentions of letting things go back to normal. They're true psychopaths. And you know what? They may be, but we still have power. We can still do way more than they can. There's more of us. And whatever we're going to do with love, authenticity, and faith.
Indeed.
Cool. Ian, thank you so much. You're a legend. Everybody else, goodbye. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock, same time, same place. I don't know what we're talking about tomorrow. Oh, emotional management. It's going to be an awkward one.